Hey girlfriends, I'm a lawyer, but I'm not a shark. I'm not a pit bull. I'm not, I don't know whatever word you would use to describe a super aggressive attorney, but that's not me. And that's by design. It's not a personality flaw. It's not because I don't care enough. It's because I don't think that that's the way that clients are best represented. I get it though. I get that you want to feel represented. Hiring an attorney represents a significant investment, and you want to feel like your attorney cares, that your interests are going to be protected, and that person is really going to fight for you and your kids. But I don't think a fight has to look like a literal battle. It's often a question, instead of fighting, of diplomacy, of negotiation. And let's talk about it a little more. So in divorce and custody cases, basically no matter where you are, there's a relatively narrow range of potential outcomes. More and more states are moving towards mandated 50-50 custody. And then as far as how property is divided, there's only two real models: equitable distribution and community property. And in both cases, those often end up with the parties receiving roughly 50% of the marital share. Though there can be variations, and you should always talk to an attorney in your area, that's still kind of a general mode. Spousal support can be a bit of a wild card issue, but even in spousal support cases, there's often a range of potential outcomes. And it's a good idea to talk to an attorney, maybe even interview a couple of attorneys to get an idea of what they think a final disposition might look like in your case. Because as far as I'm concerned, the worst case scenario would be to spend tens of thousands of dollars, potentially even hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on, how much fighting is going on, to wind up with essentially the same agreement or the same, terms of your court order that you would have wound up with if you had negotiated. That's not good. That's not a good return on investment, right? So if we're measuring your investment in an attorney in terms of ROI, you want to get good results with the least amount spent in attorney's fees as possible, right? Like, that's just basic math. It's common sense. You don't want to spend more for the same results. And oftentimes the pit bull attorneys, the aggressive attorneys, the really shark-like attorneys are the ones who have the highest attorney's fees. Not necessarily the best results, but they definitely get a lot of attorney's fees. I think it's always important to remember too that there's so much more that's available to you through diplomacy and negotiation than through litigation. When you go to court and you're arguing over how everything in your marriage is going to be divided, you have a lot less flexibility. A judge issuing an order is not going to be able to give you the kind of customizability that you can create in an agreement that you draft with your attorney and with your husband's attorney on the other side, kind of putting provisions in. A judge doesn't have the time or the ability to customize orders to that degree, on the bench while he's actively, judging or whatever it is. So these orders lack specificity. They also cost a ton. We already talked about that a little bit. They destroy relationships. And you might not care. You might think, well, I'm divorcing this guy. Like, I literally don't care what happens to him. But if you have children in common, the ability to co-parent later is going to be really, really important. If you have children in common, issues are going to come up. You're going to need to talk about them. You're going to need to be able to work through these issues, or you're going to find yourself in court again and again and again. So in many cases, I find that getting things right the first time when you're divorcing and not destroying those relationships is going to help build a path that's going to allow you guys to negotiate later, rather than going completely scorched earth and just assuming that you're going to have to go to court every 6 months to a year between now and whenever your youngest child turns 18. Like, that's awful, right? Who wants to live like that? But if we don't go scorched earth, if we try to negotiate, if we work through these issues without, just a complete bloodbath, then it's possible to preserve relationships. And I know you probably don't care, but I also think that it's important. I think that's a relevant factor to consider. And the last thing that I think I would mention is that when a judge issues an order, that doesn't necessarily maximize the value of the assets. I've seen judges just say, well, we're just going to split it 50-50. With a judge, there's really not like bargaining and taking bits of this and less of that for more of this. They're just going to split everything down the middle, maybe even sell it at auction. They don't care. They just want to divide it relatively equitably and move on. So you're not going to maximize the value of your assets if you are getting an order in court as opposed to something that you could achieve through negotiation. So I think it's not worth it to hire a shark. I think you're going to spend more, and you're ultimately, especially if it goes all the way through to litigation, you're going to wind up with less than you would have if you had been able to, move with diplomacy and negotiate an alternative. I'm absolutely not saying accept less than you are entitled to receive. You should take every single penny that you are entitled to receive under the law, because you are entitled to it, because you participated in earning it, because you need it to rebuild your life post-divorce. But you also shouldn't just fight for the sake of fighting. Like, that's not winning. And I think that these attorneys are really giving a negative impression to people of the legal profession in general, because then I hear people say, oh, I hate family lawyers, or oh, you're just a lawyer, like you're horrible, you're sending your kids to college, you're buying your Lamborghini or whatever, like on the ashes of my burned family. And I can completely understand that sentiment, but I think that if you're feeling that way, if you feel poorly represented, if you feel billed to death, if you feel the results aren't there, then maybe it's a question more of the attorney that you hired than of family law attorneys in general. And I think it's all part of the culture, right? People say that. They say they want an aggressive attorney. So then the attorneys market themselves as aggressive to attract those people. And it's often a bit of a mismatch. I think there are attorneys who are really, really aggressive and who make their careers that way. But I don't think you're better represented hiring one of them. You're welcome. Obviously, do your research, interview whoever you like, and ultimately hire the person that you feel is the best fit for you. But I do just want to caution you that I think that that's not the right choice. And if that's what you're looking for, then you're definitely not looking for me. I am not a shark. I don't believe in it, and I think I can do better through negotiation. Good luck, girlfriends.